are we doing? This is crazy.
I love the taste of salt water in the morning.
It was very painstaking because we had no crew.
What really got us started on Open Water had nothing to do with the story. What really got us started was we were very excited about, the technology, the affordable technology that existed. We wanted to shoot a digital film because we knew we could afford to finance it ourselves, and we'd have total creative control, and we could have the freedom to experiment. But it was a question of trying to find a story that we thought would benefit from that format. Laura and I are scuba divers, and we've been scuba divers for about 11 years, and it was in the late 1990s that we read the story in the newsletter of a couple that were on vacation. They boarded a dive boat, and due to some mix-ups in the head count, were accidentally left in the water. And the script really poured out of me very quickly. I wrote the first draft in about 6 days.
When he gave me the script and I first read it, I was like, wow, this is really good. This is like great. It was fantastic. And we started to work together. We had nothing. We had no equipment, no editing equipment, no camera equipment, nothing.
Our first film was shot in the traditional manner, working with a crew and on 35mm film. Right after we made that film, our daughter was born, and for that reason we were very attracted to the idea of scaling down and stripping away all the other stuff and working in a very simple back to basics kind of manner, and the challenges that presented.
I was really so connected to our daughter and sort of being in that mindset. It was hard for me to sort of make the transition into working. And so really Chris was the one who did all the research and found out about what cameras we needed and what equipment we needed, and it was like starting from zero.
We didn't know anything about making a digital film, and we had to learn it, and we spent a lot of time on the internet. Great tool, obviously, for learning anything. And really researching the right kind of cameras to use, the right editing software to go with, the right sound. Sound was critical to the project.
We had, very, very specific breakdown of every single thing. Chris would tell me we're going to need these filters and these wires, and it was a long list, 40, 50 pieces of equipment that we'd have to buy. Then I estimated what our location costs would be, what our boat rental costs would be. We had a budget, and of course I had learned how to do this from our first film.
We knew purposefully that we wanted to cast unknown actors. It kind of supported the whole style and approach we wanted to take to the film. This goes back to the idea of working in digital video. I think one of the advantages is you get a certain sense of immediacy and realism, and that dictated working with unknown actors.
I love casting, and the whole audition process is very exciting to me, watching actors and putting them together.
My agent knew Chris and Laura's reputation, and their first film, Grind, had been excellent, and I think she'd helped in the casting of that film too. And Chris and Laura pretty much had their female lead all set, but she said, "No, you've got to see my client Blanchard. I really think you'd like her."
So we began the casting process looking for unknown actors before the script was complete, because we had certain ideas about what we wanted to explore as far as this couple and their relationship. But the whole spirit of the project was really about collaboration, working in a different way, working in a close-knit family kind of environment where everybody was, really just kind of focused on the work without all the usual distractions. And that was one of the turn-ons of doing the project.
Chris and Laura didn't have a huge entourage with them. It was just the two of them in this audition room in, downtown New York.
Yeah, no casting
and
person.
No casting person, and it was just the two of them and a camera, which was exactly how it was going to be for the rest of the process. So it was a great sort of initiation into what this experience was going to be.
We wanted people who, first of all, were willing to work in this kind of way. There'd be no crew. There would be, no hair and makeup. They'd be responsible for that themselves. No honey wagons and trailers or any of those things. They would have to be certified scuba divers or willing to become certified scuba divers. That there'd be nudity, and that they would be working very closely with large wild sharks. We spent many, many evenings hanging out, letting them know what it was we're interested in exploring with these characters, and finding out what it was they were interested in exploring, and creating the characters together.
Chris and Laura were unbelievably receptive to our ideas. They would just listen to us. They wanted to hear all about just the way we spoke and the things that were important to us, the things that mattered to us, our instincts when we had heard about this idea, the ideas that we'd had about what our characters might be like.
Then Laura and I went back and we wrote pretty much the final draft of the script, or a very very close to it.
It was really neat to see how they had incorporated, which things they'd been interested in, which things they weren't, and different little parts of our personalities that had popped up. We'd read just a couple lines and we'd laugh. I'm like, oh, that's Daniel says that's exactly how he talks.
And they also added their stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
stuff of Chris and Laura's as well.
What's that?
We had been shooting through the years as divers on vacation, in the water and on the water, so it wasn't a huge extension, and with our family. So it wasn't a huge extension to think, you know what, we'll bring along 2 actors, like a little bit more to our family, and we'll shoot. Shooting on location is very expensive. So, to us it was really very expensive to fly down in hotels, and we stayed in nice places. We wanted to work in a very sane and a very comfortable way, knowing that the shooting would be very grueling.
Now, we financed this ourselves, and one of the ways we were able to do that was that, I wanted to continue working full-time at my job, and I was determined not to miss a day, of that. So we shot this whole film on weekends and vacation time. In fact, nobody I worked with was even aware I was making a film.
Because of the fact that we shot over a period of 2.5 years, a lot of our costs were amortized. Chris was working and bringing in income. And we did have to invest some of our savings.
And again, doing this on weekends was not a matter of just, having the actors come over. We live in New York. We'd have to catch flights and go out to the Bahamas and whatever island we were working from and work and come back and be at work the following Monday. Working out in the open ocean was critical to us, and working, with real sharks. So as a diver, I've been lucky enough to do some shark dives in the past. And again, I did some research and found out that the go-to guy in the business as far as working with sharks in film production is Stuart Cove.
I think we should get the shots you really want to get.
This was different than how most filmmakers want to incorporate sharks in their films and their work, because we were using the talent. We weren't using stunt doubles. Usually when we work with sharks, we use stunt doubles.
We got on the boat and we had a little bit of chop in the water, and it was a gray day, and then we pulled up, the boat stopped,
And it got even more gray.
and a different kind of gray happened, and it was moving.
It was just sharks as far as the eye could see.
And they just sort of came up. We didn't do anything. We
Out
just
of
turned the motor
nowhere.
off.
That's the scary thing, is that, it looks like a beautiful, calm ocean. You would jump over the side, go swimming in a second, and then all of a sudden they all just like ghosts. And then all of a sudden there were 50 sharks in the water. And you would never have known they were there in a million years.
That's a little bit crazy.
You guys should react to that.
You did.
Okay, good.
The one thing we were interested in doing in this film that was different, I think, as far as sharks go, we wanted to portray them differently, first of all, than we had seen in other films. We wanted to capture their behavior in the most realistic manner possible. We wanted it to be sensational. We just wanted to really capture exactly how things would unfold out there.
We're stuck in the middle of the ocean.
And we also trained the actors in this short period of time that if they felt sharks coming around them, to freeze up, to keep still, not start flailing about. Well, that's easier said than done when a shark bumps into you.
Chris put the camera in the housing, we checked everything out, and then we're like, okay, let's go. And I went in first for a while.
Yeah, it was a good idea. It was Chris's idea. It was very smart because Daniel couldn't wait to get in. He was like chomping at the bit. And I had perhaps slightly exaggerated my confidence level in the swimming with the sharks arena. And I had said, oh no, I'm psyched. Oh, I'm a little nervous. I'm swimming with sharks, but I totally downplayed it. Meanwhile, I was really, really nervous.
Oh, shark just scared me so bad. I just kicked another one of them.
I prefer to call it more choreographing the sharks than wrangling them. And we do it by throwing pieces of bait in different areas. If we want the sharks to pass left to right, we'll throw a piece of bait to the left, all the sharks are over there, and then we'll throw another piece to the right, and all the sharks will swim to where the bait is. So it's a matter of just moving bait around and choreographing the sharks to get them to do what we want for the shot.
A big shark got in the cage with me. I was trying to push him out, finally had to get out of the cage. About 2 or 3 sharks were swimming in the cage, and Dave had to get them out.
We were doing something different every day.
Right.
We never knew we had to be prepared for everything because we never knew what we were actually going to shoot the next day.
Depending on what weather conditions we had, if it was a sunny or cloudy day, if the waves were choppy or not, we had to match different things. So we had to have every scene, the entire script ready at every moment. We'd get out there and Chris would say, okay, this is perfect for this scene.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd go.
I bought a Final Cut Pro system, and I was just really astonished about, what it could do. So I cut it home in a small office in our apartment.
I was so impressed by the whole structure of the film. I think it really is different. It's really original. And that's all Chris, just the crap that went into, such a simple storyline and making it engaging, or trying to, make it engaging and suspenseful.
This really sucks, but we're gonna get through this, okay?
For so long, Laura and I were really working in a vacuum, it was just the two of us. And you need to be able to get some kind of perspective. So, what we would do once we complete some of the earlier cuts is we had friends in the film business and all, and just, we'd have screenings for people.
We didn't have a whole lot of time to sit around and dream about where it might go. We were really busy just trying to technically accomplish what we needed to accomplish.
Even though we were holding our test screenings and things, there's time that you really need to get more feedback. And the Hamptons Film Festival was coming up in New York. And, we were a little nervous because the truth is the film was not done yet. In fact, the cut that they accepted was very different than the cut that ended up going to Sundance and being put in theater. But we decided now's the time to come out and try to get a sense of how an audience would respond to this film. Our hope at the Hamptons was that because it was more for our own understanding of how the film plays with an audience, that we would kind of be able to do this and go under the radar. And when I heard Variety was there, I was terrified, because one bad review from Variety could really hurt a small project like this, and the film wasn't done. But as it turned out, we got a rave review. I think it really did a lot for propelling the film and getting it out there. So it was a fantastic experience.
The review that came out was one of the best reviews I've ever read of any film in Variety, ever. We were terrified and absolutely stunned by it. And because of that, Sundance ended up getting wind of our film.
So when we got to Sundance, we had our hopes. We dared to hope that maybe we might get picked up, and things happened very quickly. They had, 5 screenings scheduled for us, and we had our Friday night screening, and the next morning we had a screening, and sort of the thought would be that we would go through another 1 or 2 screenings, and then maybe we would see what would happen. But everything hit very, very quickly on that Saturday.
It was an unbelievable experience to be there, to see what Chris calls our little home movie up on a full-size screen in front of 400 other people, and have it be the first time I'd seen the film in its entirety.
That was when he was the most scared I think I've ever seen him. Forget the sharks.
She was waiting for the sharks. I was waiting on that first night in Sundance.
He was.
To get in just meant so much that I was determined not to get caught up in all the nonsense in the business end of the festival. So I was making a list of the films I wanted to see. I was going to just really enjoy that experience of being there at Sundance. As it turned out, I didn't get to see any films.
After getting to Sundance, we found out that there were some people from Lionsgate that were actually at the Hamptons who were sort of trying to track it along.
What struck us as special about Open Water was, as soon as we saw it, we knew that Open Water was the kind of film that could combine indie credibility with commercial viability and turn into a real special theatrical release for us. Everybody saw the film, everybody recognized the magic in it, and together we made a group decision that we were going to make a big bet on the movie, and thankfully it paid off.
We were the first film to sell out of the 2004 Sundance Film Festival. Lionsgate kept us involved and kept us in charge as far as the finishing and in the final, getting the film done and getting it on the screen.
Collaborating with Lionsgate and working with Lionsgate really has been a fantastic experience. And I think what's been so great, Lionsgate is known as being artist friendly, and that's turned out to be true in our case. They allowed us completely to finish this film. I mean, technically, we finished the film entirely. We supervised the mix. We did all the color correcting ourselves, the film out. Really, we finished the film, and it was great that Lionsgate allowed us to do that.
It was a good movie. It was a low-budget movie. It was a husband and wife filmmaking team that was a great story. We took some of the scarier elements of the film and put those into the marketing materials to let general audiences know that they weren't going to just see this no-budget, no-name movie, but they were going to see a movie that was going to give them chills and thrills and really scare the bejesus out of them at the same time, while also seeing an innovative film with interesting filmmaking techniques and seeing things that they had never seen before.
Then reviews started coming out, and it all has just been this unbelievable, the stars have collided on this film in so many different ways.
I looked at it and I felt that it was a good investment. I felt that this film had, commercial appeal to it, and I felt that, I hoped that we would get some kind of distribution. I didn't know if we would get a theatrical distribution, but I felt that we had a good shot at it.
Certainly, we were beyond surprised at what's taken place since. Never in a million years could have anticipated the level of success and that we achieved. That the film would be out there, around the world, playing in so many countries, and the critical response. This film opened up on 2,709 screens. I mean, it blows our mind, just and crazy.
A lot of times filmmakers will ask me, what are acquisition executives looking for with their films? And whether it's a finished film, whether it's a screenplay, there are some similar criteria to both.
You really have to kind of start with a story that's well written and your understanding of the movie you want to make. And if you do that right, you're going to be able to convince somebody else that it's an endeavor worth taking and a greater risk and a reward scenario.
If you have what you think is a neat idea for a film, but you can't quickly capture the essence of who you're making this film for, who's going to go, why are they going to go, what's so interesting about your story that's going to set it apart from the hundreds, if not thousands, of other films competing for people's attention.
It starts with, a really cool idea and a really passionate filmmaker. In the case of Open Water, it's a great idea, but what makes the film work on so many levels is it is a really smart screenplay, and the actors do a great job, and Chris and Laura have done an extraordinary job making this film.
Sometimes you can get all wrapped up in all the technical and mechanical aspects and forget the sort of the core of what filmmaking is about, which is, as any art form, it's about expressing yourself and exploring and having fun and learning also how to tell a story and understanding what this medium is.
No one can ever really predict what's going to hit and what's not. You need to make a film that's going to entertain, engage, and if you engage, maybe even get a certain kind of message out there that you want. What do I want to see next? If you find that you're at the expense of your own ideas, you're trying so desperately hard to please somebody else, and the odds are there's no way of predicting that anyway, then you could end up with a film that doesn't please anybody, including yourself.
When you look down the indie films that have worked, there's always been something different about them. Blair Witch, had a completely different style. Now, people were divided about loving it and hating it, but everybody had to go see it for that feeling.
Films don't have to be a big budget to be high concept. Usually when people think of high concept, they think of meteorite heading towards Earth. All of a sudden you're talking about, a budget of over $100 million. It doesn't have to be that way, and there have been a series of very, very innovative filmmakers who embrace the parameters of a low budget. Blair Witch Project, high concept, low budget. Pi, another great example, high concept, low budget.
And as a filmmaker, you have to be mindful of the fact that downstream, you've got to show this film, you've got to market this film. And I think when you're making a film, you have to think, how am I going to get somebody else to understand what my vision is, and how are they going to be able to communicate that vision to the public?
No matter how many times you're told no, if you believe in yourself and you believe in your story, you have to keep plugging away. There's so many overnight success stories that are really 15-year overnight success stories, so you can't get discouraged easily. You have to have a very thick skin.
We want a film that's smart. We want a film that is passionate, from the filmmaker. But on top of that, the one thing the filmmaker should always be aware of is, how does your film stand out in the marketplace? There's something has to be about it that is electrifying, or when somebody says in one sentence what it's about, somebody says, I got to see that movie. Or the reviews are phenomenal that are just saying, this is a film unlike anything you've seen and you need to see it. You can't, divorce that from the fact that the film has to, really, really have a vision. There has to be something about it that just works on a fundamental level, and really, really having just a smart, script and smart execution as a director and filmmaker.
If you keep at it and you keep learning and you keep learning from your mistakes, maybe someday it'll come together for you, and we were lucky enough that it came together for us on this picture.
Yes, this is a handmade, homemade, family-made picture. This was done with cameras that are not much more sophisticated or much more expensive than consumer cameras. It was done, with ingenuity. It was done by challenging ourselves, pushing ourselves, working really damn hard, and working together without a crew in a way that was completely different than the traditional ways that films are made. And I think there's something inspiring about that.
We're just going to have to wing this whole thing.
Know who your audience is, and if you persevere and you can take a good story and tell it well, you have a great chance of success.
If you give yourself the opportunity to, find the film, in amongst all the footage that you shot and let that film kind of come to life. It's not unlike, what Stephen King in his book On Writing talks about, discovering his books are kind of like fossils. He kind of starts writing as he's brushing away the dirt, and all of a sudden it's revealed what's beneath. And I think sometimes independent films are kind of made the same way.
Sharks are the prehistoric animals, really the dinosaurs of the oceans.
Sharks are the apex predator.
They're so unique and powerful.
They sort of bite first and ask questions later. Sharks have been cast as being these horrible pests and predators on people in the past, and we just know that's just not true. They are a resource for us in at least three ways. First, they're an ecological resource. They're important in the ocean as a top predator to help balance life in the sea.
195.
Secondly, they're a resource in terms of helping us directly in human health, because we have so much to learn from these animals in terms of how they fight disease, including cancer, that we're working here at Mote Marine Laboratory to study that and apply that to the development of pharmaceutical products for people. And third, they're a resource economically, because they're the basis of very large fisheries, as well as aquariums and dive operations that need the living animal.
And the myth really is that when you go in the water, you're going to be eaten by a shark. What we do at the aquarium is we do bring in sharks from possibly the wild, and we try and display them to the public. And by doing that, they're really symbols to show really just how unique they are, how harmless they may be. The stereotypes that have really been bestowed upon them are really not very true. So people get to see the different sizes and shapes in a different way, but more importantly, they get to learn and be educated about the sharks. And hopefully that's going to dampen their fear of sharks.
Most divers would say that it would be very lucky if you were to see a shark on your dive. A lot of times we see Caribbean reef sharks and black-tipped reef sharks and all sorts of little horn sharks and such, and it's exciting, and it does cause a little bit of an adrenaline rush, and in fact it makes you respect the majesty of the sharks. They are apex predators, which means they're the top of their food chain.
Statistics show the frequency of shark attacks rises with popular dive times.
Their brains are large, and their sensory systems are sophisticated. The brains are highly dedicated to the sensory capabilities, so they're really like swimming computers that are going around monitoring the environment and responding to those stimuli in a kind of a hardwired way.
The Project Aware Foundation was founded back in 1992 by leaders at PADI. The philosophy of aquatic world awareness, responsibility, and education is really a way to teach divers to interact responsibly with the underwater world and make no impact, in fact, have a positive impact when they're diving. Our mission is to conserve underwater environments through education, advocacy, and action.
When you're diving, most times you're in the water, you're rarely ever going to encounter seeing a shark unless you go to the Great Barrier Reef or Tahiti, for example. There's ecotourism where the dive guy will bring in bait to bring in the sharks to have people see them. Most of the times when you're diving without bait or whatever, you're almost never going to see a shark.
There's hundreds of species of sharks, and they all operate very differently. Actually, most of the sharks are deep sea animals that are little guys only about so big as adults. In certain parts of the world, like the Bahamas, there's dive operations where one can go and see these beautiful animals in dozens coming around and taking food right in front of you. You see how tame sharks can be in that kind of setting, and they're not the wild, maniacal predators that they've been cast to be by Hollywood in previous films.
In any film I've seen prior to this, it's always someone falls in the water and a shark seeks them out and rips them apart. Whereas here you have these two characters that are out in the ocean, and the sharks really aren't interested. It's only after a certain period of time when physically certain things are happening to them, as dehydration sets in, as the elements set in, as they're starting to break down, that the sharks start moving in, because these two people start resembling a primary food source, which is some kind of wounded animal or a creature in distress.
One of the things I did like about the movie was that it showed the divers in the water for a very long time before sharks started to kind of be around and bother them. The sharks were in the area, and it's very likely that the dive site where these two were would be a place where sharks would inhabit. but you didn't see sharks just, coming up right away and ripping them apart and that sort of thing. Unlike the way that Hollywood has depicted sharks in other characterizations.
What happens in our film, unfortunately, happened, and it's a very, very rare occurrence. You're more likely to be sucked out of a window of an airplane than to have what happened in our movie happen. So we want people to know that, just if you go in the water, you're not going to get eaten by sharks. Of course, in certain parts of the ocean, if you've been in the water a long time, a shark as a natural predator will become interested. But they don't have this kind of nefarious, malevolent, hatred of human beings that they're out to get you. That's just not what it is.
Annual shark-related injuries pale in comparison to injuries caused by simple household items, such as nails, ladders, trimmers, chainsaws, and even toilets.
Most of the shark attacks in the world are mistaken identity. In the Bahamas, the few shark attacks that happen annually here are with spearfishermen, where a spearfisherman goes down and shoots a big grouper and it's flailing, it's bleeding, and the shark goes crazy and tries to bite the grouper, mistakenly bites the spearfisherman. In California, it's surfers. They're on top of a surfboard and they look like a seal, and the white shark comes up and bites them. Usually as soon as they bite them, they let them go. So sharks are discriminate eaters, and generally you're pretty safe being in the water with them.
Sharks do have one flaw, though, one imperfection. That has been their bane in the last 20 or 30 years, and that is that as predators, they are not evolved to or adapted to be the prey.
Humans are the greatest threat to the survival of sharks. We are eating more seafood because there's more of us, and shark meat is good. It's very, very tasty. It's a nice firm steak, and it is a popular seafood item. We're catching 100 million sharks a year to feed our appetite. Okay? The scary thing is about half of those, or 50 million, are actually thrown overboard dead or dying because they either got entangled in fishing gear that was going for another species, or they cut the fin off and throw the carcass overboard because what they're really going for is that fin, which is a delicacy for the shark fin soup.
So when they become the prey, their numbers go way down, and they're incapable of reproducing fast enough to bring their numbers back. And this has become a problem now worldwide, a global problem in shark conservation.
In our lifetime, we could see many sharks endangered, if not eliminated from basically the world. You have over 100 million sharks that are killed annually. 100
million sharks a year versus how many shark attacks on humans per year? 70, 60, depending on the year.
Even with coastal shark populations declining rapidly, statistics show shark attacks remain directly correlated to human population numbers.
When you look at how many shark attacks there are, there's far less than 100 a year. So if you look at that in perspective, for every single person who's attacked by a shark, we're taking about 1 million sharks out of the sea. That's a pretty scary thought when you need that predator to keep ecosystems healthy and balanced.
Now we're in a stage where we're going back out to the ocean, and we're applying high-tech methods to track these animals, to learn more about their behavior and their ecology. We're really now getting to the point where with things like satellite tags, where we can track these animals with satellites, we can follow a shark through its entire life cycle and know about the critical habitats that those animals need and how long they live and where they go.
This animal will get to be 9 feet long in the wild.
These are not animals to be feared. They're not seeking us out. They're not, human beings are not on the menu. It's just really they're victims of a lot of hype and a lot of bad press.
They play such an important role in the aquatic environment, and I think that's what people don't necessarily realize. They don't see the benefit that sharks have to offer the ecosystem. There's lots of things people can do to help conserve sharks, and probably the biggest thing is education, trying to dispel the myth that sharks are these vicious killing machines, that we actually need them for our healthy ecosystem.
Our mission with the Seafood Watch program is really to take people from caring about the oceans to caring for the oceans. So we have what we call the Seafood Watch Pocket Guide, which is something that you, the consumer, can take with you to restaurants or to the supermarket to make seafood choices that are more environmentally friendly.
We have so much we need to learn from these animals. They've been around for 400 million years. They're a very important part of ocean ecology. These are top predators that sit on the top of food chains and in many ways control the balance of life in the sea.
Sharks maintain the delicate balance of healthy oceans that we enjoy today as a source of seafood, as a source of recreation, as a source of beauty. So we want to make sure that our marine ecosystems are in check and are in balance for us to enjoy for generations to come.